We're studying Parashat Shemot, and Reb Leib Heyman analyzes, I think, a fundamental misconception or maybe overlook in our Torah. He analyzes a great dispute which starts in this week's Torah portion and carries out very far into the Torah, almost all the way till the end. And this is a dispute between the two infamous characters of Datan and Aviram. If you've heard of them, great. If not, you'll hear more about them. And Moses and Moshe Rabbeinu. This is a dispute that dates back to, according to the Midrash, when Moses was 20 years old, when he finally leaves the palace for the first time to go and see his brothers and sisters, the Jewish people. And then he sees this Egyptian man beating a Jewish man. We'll get into why and how later. Moses murders the Egyptian man, buries him. Next day, he comes out again from the palace, and he sees two Jews fighting with one another. And he goes over to one and he says, "Hey, why are you hitting your fellow? Don't fight." Another one looks back at Moses and says, "You're giving me musar, you're giving me an ethical discourse on not hitting others? You murdered an Egyptian yesterday." And then now Moses knew why, unfortunately, the Jewish people deserved what they were going through. Again, it stems right back to their baseless hatred, which keeps on popping up over and over again. But this was a great dispute. This was the beginning of a dispute, of a lifelong dispute that Datan Aviram had with Moshe. And Rabbi Leib wants to analyze what is the root of this dispute and what can we learn from it. So I want to take you to chapter 5, Exodus chapter 5, verses 20 and 21. Take a look. Vayifkiu et Moshe ve'et Aharon nitzavim likratam betzetam me'et Paro. So they met. We don't know who they are yet. They met Moses and Aaron on their way coming out from Paro's palace. This was when Moses and Aaron go and request from Paro to let my people go. And Paro obviously says no. They come up to him and they tell him, they tell Moses and Aaron, Yireh Hashem alechem v'yishpot. May the Lord look upon you and judge you. One second. May the Lord look upon you and judge you, for you have brought us into a foul order in the eyes of Paro and in the eyes of his servants, to place his sword into their hands to kill us. So who's talking so harshly to Moses and Aaron? Who would come in and condemn them of making it so much harder for the Jewish people, and that they were doing something so wrong? Pause that, hold that thought for a moment. Reb Leib says it is evident from the Talmud, this is in Talmud Sotah, page 12a, that there were spiritual leaders guiding the Jewish people in Egypt. We know that Amram, Moses' father, was a great leader. When Paro decreed that all the boys are to go be thrown in the river, what did he do? He separated from his wife to make sure that he, neither anyone else, would have any kids, to make sure they had to have no boys. So what happened? All the men continued and followed suit. Everyone split from their wives. Yes, we know Miriam stood up to him. That's not the point. The point is that Amram was a leader. Whether he was appointed or not, he was a leader and people followed him. The Reb Leib wants to know if there was a leadership that was guiding the Jewish people in Egypt. Why is it that they never advised the Jewish people to revolt against this suppression that the Egyptians are imposing upon them? Why not? Why can't they do what Paro was really afraid of? Take a look at your screen. I didn't pull it up. Okay, I'll tell you. The Paro in chapter 1, in Exodus chapter 1, verse 10, says that we have to outsmart the Jewish people, because if not, they're going to wage war against us and overthrow us. They're more numerous than us. Asks Reb Leib, how come didn't the leadership of the Jewish people encourage the Jewish people to revolt against the Egyptian people? That's question number one. Question number two is, why didn't the leadership stand up and warn the Jewish people not to fall into Paro's trap of turning them into slaves? Why was it only that the tribe of Levi was able to never get drawn into that? What happened to the rest of the nation? How couldn't the leadership of the Jewish people prevent this scheme that Paro was trying to pull on the Jewish people, to which he was successful? 11 out of 12. Answers Reb Leib that the leaders of the Jewish people in Egypt, they understood that there was a need for this suppression for Bnei Israel, and they had to accept it. This was because, of course, like we mentioned, there was a tradition that they had that the Jewish people would be exiled and suppressed in Egypt. As we have in Genesis chapter 15, verse 13, that Abraham is told by God, "Vayomer la'Avram yado et eda ki ger yeh zaracha be'eretz lo lahem va'avadum v'inu otam 400 shana." God tells Abraham during the Brit Ben Abetarim, "You shall surely know that your seed will be strangers in a land that's not theirs, and they'll enslave them and oppress them for 400 years." Also, when it comes to Joseph by the end of his life, look at chapter 50, verse 25 in Genesis. "Vayashba Yosef et bnei Yisrael lemor." And Joseph adjured, he decreed to the Jewish people, saying, "Pakod yifkod Elokim etchem v'halitem et atzmotai mizeh." God will surely remember you, and you shall take up my bones out of here. On this verse, chapter 50, verse 25 in Genesis, Rabbeinu Yonatan ben Uziel, with his monumental translation on our Torah, tells us that Joseph decreed to the Jewish people to tell their children that they will be suppressed by the Egyptians, and they will not be able to leave until two great saviors, two, will come and notify them that God is coming and freeing them from this bondage. So Bnei Israel, explains Reb Leib, they listened to their leader. They listened to Amram. They listened to the leadership, and they accepted the slavery and bondage because this was the decree that they had a tradition from Abraham as well as from Joseph. With this introduction, Reb Leib says, now we can try to attempt to understand the difference of opinion that the Datan Aviram had with Moshe. You see, from the fact, Reb Leib proves, from the fact that Datan Aviram joined Korach's revolt, this is later on, this proves that they were great people, because only great people, unfortunately they were great, but they were men of status, all joined Korach's revolt. They were all heads of courts. They were very high-standing people. Reb Leib says that Datan and Aviram were part of the leadership that were guiding the Jewish people in Egypt. He has another proof. He says that they were not wicked, so wicked as we imagine, because they didn't die during Makat Choshech, during the plague of darkness, where 80% of the Jews died. They survived that. It must mean that they weren't that bad after all. It just means that they had a different opinion than Moses. Their opinion was that the Brit Ben Abetarim, the covenant that Abraham had with God, and when Abraham questioned God, how am I going to know that my descendants are going to inherit this land? That not only obligated the Jewish people exile, but they held that it obligated the Jewish people to suffer in exile. And that was Datan Aviram's shita, as we say. That was their opinion. Moses was different. Moses had another opinion. Moses comes out and he sees this Egyptian trying to kill and beat another Jewish man. Moses gets up and kills an Egyptian man. Why would he do that? Because Moses was of the opinion exile is what the Jewish people deserved, but the slavery, the bondage, this misuse, this horrible act of taking advantage of the Jewish people and beating on them was not what was originally decreed. And he had to put a stop to it. Similarly, Shifra and Pu'ah, the two, how do we say? Oh, I'm having a blank. The two, not maidservants. Doulas I have here in my thing. Yeah, that's the Hebrew word. Midwives, thank you. Okay, I had a brain freeze. The two midwives who would deliver the Jewish babies, they also were like of the opinion of Moses. Paro decrees for me to kill all the boys. We can't do that. Because exile is what the Jewish people deserve, and not this level and degree of bondage and slavery and torture and murder. That's too much. Datan and Aviram held differently. They disagreed. Their opinion was that the Jewish people must suffer greatly. Unfortunately, the more, the better it will be for them long term. They held that Moses was violating God's decree by killing the Egyptian, and that they were doing the greatest service to the Jewish people. They were upholding their duty to turn him into Paro, which they did. So their opinion becomes crystal clear, Leib says, later on, like we read at the beginning of this portion of this section, that as soon as Moses and Aaron leave Paro's palace, two people come and they say, "What have you done to us? You ruined everything. You made it harder for us. You're bringing death to us." You know those two people were? Datan and Aviram. Because they've been disagreeing all along with Moses. Paro should be giving us hardship and slavery and bondage. That's what's going to get us out. You going to ask him to make it easier for us to let us out? That's blasphemy. Moses himself at that point, Leib points out, doubts if he's really doing the right thing or not. Take a look right after. This is right after Datan and Aviram come to Moses and Aaron. Then Moses turns to God and cries out to him and says, "Ume'az bati el Paro." He says, "Since I've come to Paro ledaber bishmecha, to speak in your name, God, hera la'am hazeh," he made it even worse for the Jewish people. "Ve'atzel lo itzalt et amecha." I have not saved your people. So Moses himself is doubting, is he doing the right thing or not? Leib says there's an interesting note. Listen to this nuance before I just solidify and I conclude on their dispute, or summarize their dispute. But Leib makes an interesting, a beautiful, beautiful observation. He says, Datan and Abiram, they were only opposed to Moshe. Sorry, they were not originally opposed to Moshe when he came and he claimed that he was selected by God to free the Jewish people. They were cool with that. If you check chapter 4 in Exodus, verses 29 to 31, when Moses and Aaron come and they meet all the elders, everyone accepted them. Moses performed the signs of tradition that they were waiting for the proof of the Savior, and they accepted him, including the Datan Aviram. We see no opposition there. After he went to Paro, Moses and I went to Paro, and Paro rejected them, then Datan Aviram get up and say, no, you made it worse for us. You guys are not the right people. However, once the suffering increased, then they went back to holding, you're not the right guy, you're not the savior. So that's just an interesting observation Reb Leib points out, that they, even though they disagreed with Moses years ago, which according to calculation, 60 years prior, but today, when Moses came in Aaron to go to Paro, they accepted him. They said, okay, maybe it is you. When they saw they weren't freed, then they again held like they originally held in their great dispute against Moses. So to summarize, what is the dispute between Moses and Datan Aviram is the following. Moses held that suffering had a limit to it, that they were supposed to be in exile, but primarily exile, not suffering, and there's a limit to how much suffering they have to endure. Datan Aviram said there's no limit. As long as the Jewish people are in exile, there's no limit to how much suffering and pain they are to endure. That's the first point that they disagreed on. The second point they disagreed on is that Moshe held that the Exodus may take time and may even get worse before it gets better. Datan Aviram said no, when the true and proper Savior comes, the Exodus will happen immediately. It will not take time, and it will not get worse before it gets better. Reb Leib says the problem is over here, we had a dispute between great leaders and sages, and there was no one who could come and decide and declare who was correct. And this is the inception or the undertone that goes throughout much of our Torah of the undermeaning of Moses that took place. It's because not everyone accepted him. Reb Leib now tries to find merit or favor for Datan Aviram and their skepticism, which was a fierce opinion against Moses. The question is, how did they still disagree with Moses after he performed the 10 plagues and the Jewish people left? How could it be? How do we know that they really disagreed? So Reb Leib tells us that when Moses took the Jewish people out of Egypt, Paro had a change of heart. When he sent them out, he saw that the Jewish people were stuck by the sea, and he said, and I'm quoting, chapter 14 in Exodus, verse 3, Ve'amar Paro livnei Yisrael, and Paro says about the children of Israel, Nevuchim hem ba'aretz, they are trapped in the land, Sagar alehem amidbar, the desert has closed in upon them. An obvious question is, if the Jewish people left, who is Paro talking to? Ve'amar Paro livnei Yisrael, and Paro speaks to the Jewish people. Who's he speaking to? Rabbi Yonatan ben Uziel, again in his translation, tells us, Paro spoke to Datan and Aviram, and he told them that the Jewish people are stuck in Egypt. Reb Leib says Datan and Aviram never left Egypt when the Jewish people originally left with Moses. They stayed behind. They completely disagreed with Moses from beginning to end. They stayed behind. They never accepted him as the leader, as God sent. So Reb Leib quotes the Rambam. I have the Rambam prepared to read it all through with you. I think it's going to be a little strenuous. It'll take long. But I'll tell you what Reb Leib's point is from the Rambam. If you'd like to see it, it's the Rambam in Yesodei HaTorah, the 8th chapter, the first halacha. It is a nice Rambam to read. Really, I suggest everyone to look it up. If you want, I could send it to you. It's a very nice Rambam. The point Reb Leib brings out from the Rambam is that it's evident that the Rambam held that there's no deficiency or knock on any person who did not believe in Moshe Rabbeinu until the Mount Sinai revelation, until God spoke through Moses' mouth. Before that, if you were in doubt or if you would believe in Moses because of all the plagues and the signs and the miracles he performed, that's okay. But anyone who didn't believe in Moses after the Sinai revelation, that was a tremendous flaw, a huge mistake. The fact that God was speaking out of Moses' own mouth is something nobody can deny. They saw it, they heard it with their own mouths and eyes and ears. So Reb Leib says as follows. Based on this, we can answer our questions. We can answer, well, how do we know that they disagreed on him? And how is it possible that they disagreed on him after so much? It's as follows. Every time the Torah speaks to us about the opposition of the Datan Aviram before Matan Torah, they're referred to anonymously. Their names are not mentioned. But every time, why? Again, because there may be some room for their skepticism, because it was only a performing of miracles. But there was no clear selection of Moses by God. But anytime after Matan Torah, anytime after the Sinai revelation, that Datan and Aviram stir up any garbage, any politics, any opposition against Moses, their names are mentioned. And this is because now they had absolutely no reason to be skeptical about Moses. And this, Reb Leib continues and says, sheds light that it is apparent that it was these two hoodlums who were causing nothing but trouble even before. So at first they're named anonymously. Again, they were leaders. They were named anonymously because there was room for skepticism, I hear. After Matan Torah, when there was no more room to not believe in Moses, their names are mentioned, and that it is a proof that all along they were wrong. So listen to a lesson. This is where Reb Leib ends off, and the following lesson is something I had in mind to apply to this amazing novelty that Reb Leib explains. If we pay attention to all leaders and all the greatest leaders throughout world history, but let's just keep it close to home. All good leaders have opposition. Look at Moses. He was the greatest Navi, the greatest prophet, the greatest leader we ever had. He had nothing but opposition, unfortunately. The Jewish people challenging him, Korach challenging him, the Gentiles, the surrounding Gentiles challenging him, Datan Aviram, the spies, Og Melech HaBashan. Nothing but opposition from within and from outside. Many of us could look at it and say he had all the good reasons to give up. But opposition teaches us the Torah is not a reason to give up. Opposition rather should serve as a reminder that you're actually in good company. You're doing the right thing. You're in the right direction. Opposition should inspire us to continue fighting for what we believe in, fighting for what's right and truthful. I'm always very skeptical about anything that comes too easy. Because anything that comes too easy, it's like too good to be true. There's a lot of truth to that. But after hard work and investment, that is what is satisfying and everlasting. If we look at Moshe Rabbeinu, he really had a lot of opposition. But on the contrary, that was the proof that he was in the right direction. And it is the workings of the evil inclination, etc., to fight against. I hate to speak about politics. I don't even know enough about politics to speak about politics. But I could say one thing, that whether you like his style or you don't like his style, you like him, you don't like him, you like what they say about him or you don't like what they say about him. But the President Trump has been a great president for the American people these past 4 years. And he's been great for the Jewish people over these past 4 years and for the state of Israel. Greater than any president we've ever had. And we're very thankful to him for that. But all I could say is that the sign of as much opposition that he has against him is only a sign in how good of a job he's doing, and hopefully can continue to do, if at all possible. I guess not at this point. But the fact that he has so much opposition, so much leadership that is against him, is a proof that he is in the right direction. Now, this is not my opinion. I would never speak politics or about Judaism and politics if it was my opinion alone. This is what the great sages, Torah sages of nowadays have said and are continuing to say. Like any leader of any country, especially the ones that we live in, any country that we live in, whether they are positive or negative or they're good or bad for us, they're all messengers from God. We've had some very horrible messengers in the Jewish world, from time before to even recent times. And our Torah sages have declared that President Donald J. Trump has been a positive and good messenger for the Jewish people as leader of this country. And my insight on that is that the opposition, the strength of the opposition against him, is a proof to how good he really is for us and how good he has been for us. And my message to him is a message that he lives by, that he even wrote a whole book on. I read not long ago, an amazing book, a quick book. My message to him is never give up. My message to all of us is never give up. We are never to give up when there's opposition. We're maybe supposed to stop. We shouldn't be stubborn. We should stop. We should analyze. Possibly maybe need to refocus or redirect ourselves. But if you have a goal and that goal is based on truth and on what you believe in, and you have opposition against you, it's a proof that you are in the right direction. So I want to give a blessing to us all of our participants, to all Am Yisrael, and to our President Donald J. Trump, who is a direct messenger of God, that we should all never give up. We should all understand that opposition is there to challenge us to let me repeat that. We should all understand and recognize that opposition is there to challenge us, to challenge our beliefs if we are really fighting for something that is true and that we believe in. And my blessing to us all is that we should never cave into opposition. We should only allow that to propel us and inspire us to do what we truly believe in and what's truly great for ourselves, our families, Klal Yisrael, and the entire world. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and may the merit of the Zer Shimshon and the merit of Rabbi Leib Heyman be upon us and our families. So now I know when I speak politics, I'm going to have a lot of comments. So let me allow you to unmute yourself. All right, before we get into the politics, let's see if anyone has anything on the Torah portion that I had to speak about. Any questions? Isaac, go.
My question is posted there. What type of Torah did the Leviim were studying? We didn't have the Chumash. It was all the oral Torah, only oral stuff, or was it some things written?
Good question. So the Jewish people, for many centuries before the Torah was given, they were studying Torah. When we say they were studying Torah, they were studying the creation of the world. They were understanding God, understanding humanity, the development of humanity and the creation. And they were also studying parts of Torah that were prophesied to them through their prophets, namely Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. I think we're good.